Hello everyone, our topic for today is all about hazard analysis critical control point, or also known as Haccp. What is Haccp? It identifies, evaluates, and controls hazards which are significant for food safety. If you run a food business, you must have a plan based on the hazard analysis and critical control point principles. So, the HACCP plan keeps your food safe from biological, chemical, and physical food safety hazards. To make a plan, you must identify any hazards that must be avoided, removed, or reduced. So, there are examples of hazards, including silvers of glass, human hair, nails, false nails, jewelry, metal fragments, dirt, stones, toothpicks, and pesticides may leave residues on fruits and vegetables also that might harm the health of our customers, our people. So, there are 7 principles of HACCP, namely hazard analysis, critical control point, critical limits, monitoring system, corrective action, verification procedures, and documentation. So, first principle is hazard analysis. It determines the measures necessary to control the hazards, identify the steps that hazards likely to occur, decide which hazards are significant, identify the hazards that affects the process. So, in hazard analysis, diri ta makabalo aha nag-start ang mga hazards, asa na to ma-identify, makita, then maka-decide din ta og mga proper kanang ways to prevent it. And the importance of hazard analysis is the goal is to reduce or eliminate risks related to biological, chemical, and physical hazards. So next is critical control points, or CCP. So the most important points or step where the control measure must be used to prevent, eliminate, or reduce the hazards to an acceptable level. So the importance of it is that it prevents risks that could make the completed product harmful from occurring during the production process, including physical, chemical, and biological risks. Next is critical limits. Safety limits which separate the acceptable from unacceptable. So examples, cooking temperature, storing temperature, and food temperatures. So the importance of it is that we can control food safety by setting critical limits, which also guarantees that the food you sell or serve to customers is safe. Monitoring system set up checks for control measures (CCP) to confirm that the process is under control and critical limits are not exceeded. So, businesses in the food service industry may track the history of each item and spot problems before they cause anyone to become ill by implementing temperature monitoring and best practices to prevent contamination. In corrective action, decide what to do when critical limit is reached. Action to eliminate the cause of a detected non-conformity or other undesirable situation. There can be more than one cause for a non-conformity. Corrective action is taken to prevent recurrence, and it is one made to avoid a future food safety issue. In verification, prove that HACCP plan is working. The process of verification involves taking sufficient steps to ensure that the procedures set out in the HACCP plan are working in practice, and in particular that the critical limits are sufficient to ensure that the identified hazards are controlled at critical control points. So it ensures the accuracy of the records, evaluating the monitor's performance, and determining their training equipments, ensuring the application and efficiency of the current food safety controls. Documentation keep records such as temperature charts, cleaning schedules, pest control records, equipment maintenance records, training records, delivery checks, and non-conformance reports. Food businesses are also required by law to keep records of the creation, processing, packing, distribution, receipt, holding, or importing of food items. So, Haccp has a process flow map. There are 7, and these are purchase, delivery, storage, preparation, cooking, food holding, and service. So, in purchase process, the hazards are biologically, physically, and chemically contaminated products. Of course, if we purchase ang mga hazards gyud na atong expect are the biologically, physically, and chemically contaminated. And while in controls, it must be approved by the suppliers before i-display, before i-purchase sa mga customers. In delivery process, hazards, biologically, physically, and chemically contaminated products as well. While in controls, approved suppliers, of course, they must be approved by the suppliers. Then delivery vehicle inspection, yes, there are several inspections in delivering. Then visual checks of product and date codes to ensure that it is safe, not expire, and bago pa gibuhat. In storage process, hazards, contamination, multiplication of bacteria. Contamination because kanang example, ang food kay kanang naka-storage na siya sa grapon, then present ang contamination ana. And of course, magmultiply pud ang bacteria ana kay kanang nagbuot siya sa jar. Then while in controls, maintain correct temperatures. Of course, makontrol na to. Then if ma-maintain na to ang correct temperatures, then ma-achieve na to ang goal. Then ang segregation of products, of course, we must segregate the food in this category, and isegregate po na to tong food nga lahi pod nga category para dili sila mag-uban, para dili ra kayo high ang contamination sa food. Then stock rotation. In preparation process, hazards, contamination, multiplication of bacteria, again, then the controls, separation of raw and prepared food, color coding system, clean and sanitize utensils and work areas, minimize handling and time keep at room temperature. So in controls, we need to separate the raw and the prepared food. Then we need to separate also the color of the food. Then clean and sanitize utensils and work areas. Of course, cleaning is a must, and sanitize as well. So we need to properly clean the work areas to make sure that it is safe. Then minimize handling and time keep at room temperature. So in preparation process, there is a there is a proper room temperature to follow. Then we need to minimize handling in order to avoid contamination of the food. While in cooking process, hazards, survival of microorganisms. So, um, ma ma-identify na to ang microorganisms in cooking a food. Present gina ang microorganisms. Then, while in controls, cook thoroughly to core temperature 75 degrees Celsius to avoid microorganisms. So, we will achieve this by controlling the cooking process. In food holding process, hazards, contamination, and multiplication of bacteria. Of course, present ang hazard sa food holding kay mag-contaminate ang food, then mag-multiply ang bacteria because gina-hold man ang food. Then, while in controls, there are hot hold and cold hold. There are proper Celsius that we need to follow in order to control the food holding process. First, hot hold, maintain above 60 degrees Celsius and cover the food. So, by doing that, by following that, we will avoid the contamination and multiplication of bacteria. While in cold hold, store below 5 degrees Celsius and still cover the food. While in service process, hazards, contamination, and multiplication of bacteria. Controls, maintain the correct temperatures, clean and sanitize utensils, minimize handling. Maintain the correct temperatures in order to achieve the service process properly. Then clean and sanitize utensils, of course, and minimize handling. We need to minimize handling in service process to avoid contamination and multiplication of bacteria as well.